I've been reading the Richard Trask book, Pictures of the Pain, which is a book about some of the photography of the JFK assassination. And in his chapter in which he's discussing the Mormon photo, for some reason, Trask devotes a significant amount of attention to Jean Hill spotting the dog in the presidential limousine. This seems odd to me because Jean Hill isn't even a photographer. She's there with Mormon. But apparently Trask thought it was significant enough and to me it looks like he's trying to make Jean Hill look silly, or he's exploiting this silly sighting of a dog in a very non-pictures of the pain way. I mean, it seems to be very off topic. It's the assassination, but it doesn't seem to be on topic. But anyway, I'm going to go through some of that here. What he's doing here is he's quoting interviews that Jean Hill did on the day of the assassination. And I'll read this one. Did you see the shooting? Yes, sir. They were driving along, and we were the only people in this area on our side, and the shots came directly across the street from us. And just as the president's car became directly even with us, we took one look at him, and he and Jackie were looking at a dog that was in the middle of the seat. And about that time, 2 shots rang out just as he looked up. All right, well, there's one sighting of the dog by Jean Hill, or one recounting of it. And then he's got another interview here. Just as Mary started to take the picture and the president came right even with us, 2 shot. We looked at him, and he was looking at a dog in the middle of the seat. 2 shots rang out, and he grabbed his chest, and a look of pain on his face, and fell across towards Jackie, and yada yada. Well, there's a picture of the pain, I guess. But again, Trask gives us 2 interviews in which Jean Hill mentions the dog, and here's yet another one. Yes, Mary and I had come downtown to see the president this morning, and we tried to get a place where we could be away from everyone, and we, I guess, succeeded. As the car came down the hill towards us, he was on our side of the street, and the president and Mrs. Kennedy were in the back seat, had a little dog between them looking at it, and just as the car came right in line with us, the president looked up, and just as he looked up, 2 shots rang out. So this is a very consistent recounting of the dog story on the day it happened. And then Trask also has this. She explained subsequently to a Warren Commission staff attorney, saying she had just barely glanced and noticed something white and fuzzy in the seat between them and assumed it was a small dog. After the shooting, and while on her way to the courts building, Hill remarked to Mormon that she could understand Liz Taylor or the Gabors traveling with dogs, but not the Kennedys. She later reconstructed in her mind that what she had seen the president and Mrs. Kennedy looking at were the roses in the seat. Roses are red, and this dog is white. Her what? I don't know what that says. Concerning the dog remained quite embarrassing to her, and was made even more painful by her husband making fun of it. Of all people in the United States, you would have to see a dog. She was also embarrassed by her Oklahoma twang and referring to Mrs. Kennedy as Jackie. Though Hill continued to mention the dog in interviews on November 22nd, she began leaving out the part of her story about following after a man who was running because reporter Featherston told her she was wrong about that, and not to say that anymore on the air. And that's interesting too. Maybe I'll get back to that. But anyway, we've got Trask here devoting significant attention to the dog, even though it's got nothing to do with the pictures of the pain. And here we can see in Jean Hill's signed sworn statement of the day that she tells the same story. They were looking at a little dog between them. And while we can't see the dog in the Zapruder film, we can see that Jean Hill is well positioned to see the critter if it's there. It looks like she probably can look down and see between the president and Jackie. And if there's a fuzzy white thing there, she could probably have seen it. Now there's a story, I don't know where it came from, that this old lady in the wheelchair gave Jackie the fuzzy critter. And for whatever reason, that story says it was a lamb chop, which is apparently a puppet that this woman Sherry Lewis used to use. I don't know why the old lady would give her such a thing, but that's a story that's out there. And if you look at the photographs, well, you can see that Jackie is not carrying a lamb chop. She's carrying another bunch of flowers in addition to her roses. And lest you think they're white, we can see the color here. They're pink and yellow and maybe a darker shade of pink. There might be one white flower there, but I don't think anyone could think that that's lamb chop. So clearly the old lady did not give Jackie a lamb chop and didn't give her anything that could be mistaken for a fuzzy white little dog. I don't know why this story got started or who started it, but it's clearly not true. Apparently Jack White believed the lamb chop story, though I haven't studied his work on lamb chops, so maybe I'm misunderstanding something there. But he believed Jean Hill was correct, that there was something there, and he could even see it, he says, in the Martin film here. But here somebody fairly convincingly demonstrates that that's not lamb chop. It's really just the reflection off of Barbara Rowland's handbag, which you can see later in a frame from the same film. And it's a bit amazing that Jack White didn't bother looking at following frames and see that what he saw as the dog or the lamb chop was not actually there. But apparently he didn't. And this ended the topic in this discussion. So apparently nobody argued with that being disproven. But there is this photo of the limousine on the highway after the shooting, which apparently shows a little dog right in the middle, or I don't know if it's the middle of the seat there, maybe off to the side. It might even be that Clint Hill is holding it. I don't know, but to me that looks like Jean Hill's little dog. And if I didn't know I was looking for a little dog, maybe I wouldn't have recognized it as such. You could say this is something of a Rorschach test, but I think that's probably Jean Hill's little dog, that she really did see it, because why would she keep saying she had if she hadn't, and that it really was there, and the official story says it wasn't. And that can only mean that the little white dog had something to do with the assassination. And in this photo, the dog is prominent and right near Clint Hill. I mean, if this had just been some little stuffed animal they had with them, you would think it by now would have sunk to the bottom of the car and be on the floor or on the seat. But this is elevated as if it still is to be used, and of course Clint Hill is right there. And that brings to mind this photo, which shows apparently Clint Hill working upon JFK's head. He's doing something to JFK's head. He is holding in his right hand something, and this photo was altered to make in the circled area in red, that's actually JFK's hand, but it was altered to make it look as though it was a foot. And if you think it's a foot, then you might think it's Clint Hill's foot, but it's not Clint Hill's foot. that's JFK's hand, and if you knew that was his hand, then you would realize that in the yellowed circled area is JFK's head, and that Clint Hill is working on the head wound here, on the side front area of JFK's head. And we should note that the doctors at Parkland didn't see any wound there. And Clint Hill clearly is holding something in his right hand. So since the little dog was available to Clint Hill, and it was shortly before this, it was something that he had at the ready, it could be that whatever he's using to work on the head was some material that was inside this stuffed dog. Maybe it's mortician's wax or something like that. I don't know. But I think this is a pretty good explanation for the little dog being present. That is, that the little dog had a compartment inside of it which could hold things, and it's probably held whatever it is Clint Hill is using here to fix up the president's head. But if Gene Hill saw it during the assassination, then that means it probably was used earlier too. And I think it had more than one thing in it, I think. It had something in it that Jackie used. I guess I'll have to explain this idea about the headshot again. I'm sure I have a video on this, so I'll just go over this quickly. But there's photographic evidence that something was fired from between Jackie and JFK down toward the seat. You can see the direction of the exit material in frame 313, and a couple frames later you can see on that same trajectory another motion trail of a sort, with a little puff of smoke perhaps above Jackie's head in this picture. And I think that proves that something was fired here, and it had some kind of a recoil ejection in the frame on the right. And so that means Jackie fired something. My idea about this is that this was meant to simulate exit material coming from or going towards the front, therefore indicating a shot behind. But I'm not certain about all that. But what I am certain of is that Jackie fired something here. I don't think it was a gun. I don't think it shot JFK in the head, but I think it was meant to simulate a shot from behind. And this photo of the limo afterwards shows what I think is a cut in the seat and something slightly protruding from the middle of that cut, which I think is some kind of a hose that was used to propel some sort of material, the gunpowder gelatine, out to simulate the shot from behind. So presumably Jackie would have to have cut that in the seat, and that might mean that there was a knife in the little dog for which to do that. And presumably she would have to have attached a nozzle there, or maybe there was a nozzle already on it, I don't know, but she might have had to attach a nozzle there, and that nozzle was removed afterwards. And I think the bag boy at Parkland Hospital is probably carrying away that nozzle, perhaps the knife, and maybe even the little white dog himself is in the boy's bag. So I think Gene Hill really did see the little white dog, and that the official storytellers covered it up, made fun of her for it, made it seem ridiculous, because it was part of the conspiracy. It was a compartment that contained items that the conspirators used during the assassination and shortly after.
As the car came down the hill toward us, he was on our side of the street, and the president and Mrs. Kennedy were in the back seat. They had a little dog between them looking at it.